Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today, I have an incredibly special guest with me. Today, we have Casen Sperry, one of the co-hosts of the Resonant Arc podcast. And it's a huge pleasure to have you on, man.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So just for our audience, I would like for you to just kind of, one, introduce yourself, but also tell us a little bit about Resonant Arc. What is it that you guys do on this channel?
All right, so I'm Casen. I'm one of the two hosts for the Resonant Arc channel, which is mostly just home to the State of the Arc podcast at this moment. We talk about video games. We talk about important games, important moments in games, and in particular, games that have good stories and that really make you feel stuff. You know, we don't do a ton of like gameplay on the channel necessarily. We just talk about stuff, but we're talking about games worth talking about. We've done some recent games like Expedition 33, and we've done a bunch of old games like Final Fantasy. So.
Yeah, I've been listening to the State of the Arc podcast since before it was State of the Arc, since it was Dark Pixel, man. Yeah, I've been around since Dark Pixel, and I used to work at a garage where I would just do oil changes and stuff on cars.
Oh, cool.
And I was able to just to have headphones in all day. So whenever y'all were doing breakdowns on games like Final Fantasy 15 and general video game news. Yeah, it was it was very nice for me to be able to just listen to that sort of stuff. And if I could honestly just, as the kids say nowadays, if I could glaze for a second, I have definitely been a big fan. And y'all's work on the podcast that you do, on the just other sorts of videos that you do, stuff that is more scripted, more heavily edited, like the Dark History, right? Those videos and things like that.
So fun.
That has kind of been an inspiration for me personally to start this channel that I make. And I know you can't see right now with your camera set up, but I'll show the audience right now. I'm holding up in my hand Joseph Campbell, The Power of Myth.
How about that? Yeah,
I'm also holding up The Philosophy of History by George Hegel. I'm also holding up... George
Frederick Wilhelm Hegel. George Wilhelm Frederick Hegel. I can't remember how many ago.
You know, those Germans, man, they got like 10 names,
should I go by like my multiple middle names too?
I hope you do.
Yeah, maybe. It sounds more important when you say the full thing, right?
You definitely you come across more as a philosopher if you do that. So I think you should.
There you go.
I'm also holding up Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Holding up Dante's Inferno. Got a nice...
dude, which translation?
This is the... let me open this up real quick if I can give you a quick answer. It's from Fall River Press. This is like a new sort of...
it's a newer one? Okay.
It's a newer edition with like... illustrations and things like that. It's a really cool copy of the book. I'm also holding up the Iliad and the Odyssey in one big nice golden leather-bound copy.
Is this just going to turn into a Great Books podcast or what?
It's right now it's turning into, this is what you guys have inspired me to pick up.
Nice.
And it has literally changed the way that I view not just video games, but storytelling as a whole.
Oh, cool.
Whether it be TV shows that I'm watching with my wife, films that I go see out in the theater, even like short films, student films and things like that. I love the indie space of content creation. So being able to see from this lens of more of a literary analysis perspective, and noticing things like the hero's journey and things like that, the archetypes, and studying things like Carl Jung and all that sort of stuff. You guys have brought a lot of this to my attention. I was unaware of all of these incredible resources for analyzing stories until I listened to in part the Final Fantasy VIII podcast that you did, as well as the Xenogears podcast.
Xenogears, man. Xenogears is where it all comes
That one's
together.
going to go down in infamy for your channel. Like, you know, even if it all crashes and burns, like I think everyone will look at that series as,
at least the cream of the crop. Did that one.
Yeah, the cream of the crop. We also got The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler. And a very large, huge hard copy version of Paradise Lost by John Milton.
Oh, Milton. Yes, I do. So I have all, it's crazy. I want to be pulling out the same books you're talking about. This right next to me is actually a bookcase full of all the books you just mentioned. But if I take down the curtain, it ruins the illusion of this cool black background behind me, you know? I've got a few up here, though. I've got this one right here is a super fun one. So this is Dante's Inferno. I have probably 5 translations of Dante,
Nice.
but this one's special because this one was done by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. This is one of the first English translations. This is the classic English translation of Dante's Inferno.
Yeah, and you're reading that one to your kids, right?
Well, so I'm not reading Dante to my kids. That would be something. But I do read to them. We read the Silmarillion. We read,
let's go.
Not all of it, but we read the part of the story of Beren and Luthien. Because they actually have memorized, literally, my children have memorized the entire poem of Luthien that Aragorn tells the hobbits
That's
at
beautiful.
the foot of Weathertop. Yeah. And it's I don't know how many lines, probably 50 lines, but my kids have the entire thing memorized, maybe more than that. And it's just wonderful stuff. And they wanted to know, what is this story about? And I'm like, all right, do you guys really want to know? Because it's a whole thing. It took us 2 nights to read it. But they freaking loved it. And then we're reading Lord of the Rings right now. So
that's awesome. That's beautiful. Yeah, I've busted out the Grimm's fairy tales and stuff for my daughters, and they're so interested.
Grimm's fairy tales are just magic, pure magic.
It's so funny because I think that there is some type of psychological thing that is happening in our minds that is drawn to fear, because there is something scary about these stories that the girls they want to look at these pictures and they want to hear these stories and they want me to repeat them, but they also are like, hey, please turn the nightlight on. I don't want the scary lady from Rapunzel to come out and get me or something,
That's right. They'll say they don't want it, but I've noticed this so many times. My son is like this. He is such a scaredy cat, but he does not want me to stop reading.
Exactly.
He will start shouting. He'll jump up and down. He'll get really close to me. He's 5 now, and he'll just be like, I don't know. And I'm like, should I stop? And he goes, no, don't stop.
Yeah.
He wants to know. And I've sometimes equated this to, sometimes humans have this tendency to, when we see a horrific scene, we can't look away. Right, and I've often wondered about that. What is going on here? There's a conflict. It's like a paradox.
Yeah, we have to rubberneck when we see a horrible crash on the
accident.
Highway.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, what happened? Oh, did anyone die? And everybody's eyes are on the horror, almost as if the brain is in a heightened sense of is there something to be learned from this? Right, really wanting to look at this. We don't like what happened. We don't want it to happen.
Yeah.
But how can we make sure that doesn't happen to us?
Exactly.
And I feel like the stories, the Grimm's fairy tales, put children's minds in that state of just this is horror, but they're ready to learn, right? The mind is eager to pick up on things and symbols and patterns. And how can we tell when these types of situations are happening, in the world?
Yeah, because they're designed to be these abstract lessons.
Exactly.
And I think everyone's just looking for the meaning in that. How can I apply this lesson in my life? So yeah, I love to hear that you're into that. Also, anytime that my daughter's also like, hey, please stop reading, but please don't stop reading, my wife just gets frustrated because she's like, stop. It's too disturbing,
There is only one Grimm's fairy tale that I have actually, what would you say, censored slightly for my children.
Yes, I've had to do that multiple times.
I haven't. My children, I learned pretty quickly, especially after we read Cinderella, and the way that one ends in the Grimm's fairy tale. I've learned pretty quickly. My kids are kind of okay with this stuff, and I don't show my kids rated R movies or tons of blood and we don't watch that stuff. But when you're reading about it in a book, and especially the way that the book is, I like the translations that use more of the Shakespearean English.
Yeah, very flowery language.
Yeah, I feel like it's different and it's more approachable. It's something that the kids do need to understand and to be aware of, right? The different ways things can go wrong. But it's done in such a way that while being utterly horrific is, I think, more palatable and it's better for children and especially for their minds as they're imagining what exactly is happening. The one that I glossed over is there's just one sentence where somebody he beat his wife really badly and then he didn't and then he told her to go do something and she went and did it. And the story offers we don't even know why that had to happen. And I remember skipping that line. I want to be the kind of person who doesn't skip any of those lines. I skipped one. I skipped that one. Yeah. I was like, anyways.
Well, as much as I would love to continue talking about, these Grimm's fairy tales and stuff, I would like to also, one of the reasons why I specifically was like, man, I really would like to talk to Casen about this. Is the fact that you are a father. You've got multiple kids. I've got my oldest. I've got all girls. My oldest is 5.
Oh, that's a dream for me.
Yeah, I love
my
so
sons.
much.
I love my sons, but I always wanted girls.
Yeah, we can't wait to hopefully have a son one day. But if we have nothing but girls, man, that's a blessing for sure. So my oldest, she's 5. My middle kid, she's 3, and then we have she just turned 3 months old, a little baby girl. So I wanted to talk to you just
perfect ages, man. There's just magical times for those kids.
Yeah, I wanted to briefly just kind of talk a little bit about what it has looked like for you, kind of as a father who is passionate about video games and has currently made it your full-time gig. I don't know if you have any other sort of side things that you do as well as far as just providing for your family, but Resonant Arc right now has become the way that you're providing for your family. And just when it comes to playing video games, and maybe even in some cases including your family, your wife, your kids into that sphere that you're in. What does that kind of look like for you, man?
So my Nintendo Switch looks like an absolute wreck. It is held together by duct tape. The controllers don't click in and out properly. The game, like the cover that covers when you put the game in, it's been ripped off.
Wow.
I swear there's stuff stuck in the fan vents, but the fan vents themselves, the little lines that kind of go across the top, those have all been busted in one by one, just like somebody, I don't know who, I think I know who, but just pushed each one of them down and completely crushed them all. The Switch is on its last leg. And it was thrown on the floor just yesterday, like really hard by my youngest, who was 1. And so that's partly what it looks like when you're a gamer and you have a family. You don't get to have the nicest, most pristine Switch that is, got no fingerprints on it and all that. No, this stuff.
I can't tell you how many physical cases I've had to just throw in the trash, because they just will take out the artwork from the inside of the plastic sleeve and just tear it up or chew on it or something. I'm like, what are you doing?
In some way, they think it's cool. They're like, oh, it comes out, which is a fun realization. And then, I have a picture of the thing. And then they don't really care or think of what happens after that. They just think it's fun that they can do it.
Right.
So my Switch is a mess. My wife plays a lot of games as well. In fact, I'm about to show her this video I'm editing right now. And ask her opinion on it, because she's played a lot of the games that I've played. It's very helpful to to have the support of a spouse that actually is interested in what you do for work as well. So that's been very nice. So she's played Final Fantasy X, for example, which is what this one's about. And I'm going to just I'm not going to tell her anything about it. We're just going to hit play, and she's going to know exactly what's going on, and she'll tell me whether or not the edit works, because it's a little bit of a complicated edit this time.
If I remember correctly, it's your wife who got you into the Kingdom Hearts franchise as well.
Yes,
right?
that was totally her. She also got me into the Nancy Drew, Drew series of games. Wonderful games, man. Wonderful. I love them all. I want to play all of them with my kids. We've played a couple together. But Kingdom Hearts was mostly for my wife, because I don't know, when Kingdom Hearts first came out, I liked Final Fantasy, but Kingdom Hearts just felt a little childish. It felt like more Disney, and I was, an older teenager at the time, and I felt like, I don't need to mess with that stuff. And of course, she introduced me to it, and I found, there's some really good stuff in Kingdom Hearts, and there's some depth and an interesting story, and I really like those games now a lot. I like the themes too. I have a hard time sticking with wherever they're going with it. I've lost interest pretty handily in the most recent titles, but those first few that they made, were just wonderful. Those are great games. And my kids love them too. And they couldn't tell you a thing about the actual story of the game. That's just exactly like where my kids are. The Disney worlds.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So my kids know Pirates of the Caribbean just from Kingdom Hearts. They don't actually know Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, of course, man. That's so cool. Yeah, dude, Nancy Drew, that's one that has always stuck out to me anytime I'm hearing you talk about some of your favorite video games, because I actually never played any sort of point and click adventure games besides
you didn't play Myst or anything?
I played a little bit of Myst whenever I was younger. Actually, they put out like a remake of it on the Nintendo 3DS a few years back. I say a few years back, but now it's like 15 years ago or something. 15. Yeah. But that version of the game I played, but Nancy Drew has always interested me. For anyone who maybe wants the best Nancy Drew game to start with, what do you recommend?
Well, I have a soft spot in my heart for Japan, and so the game called Shadow at the Water's Edge is the best one. She goes to Japan. She has a blast there. It's super fun, super Japanese.
Nice.
One of the actors' accents is awful, but for the most part,
Perfect.
like it's a good game. It's a fun mystery. It's a little scary at times, and it's just a blast. Like those games, so point and click. When I was growing up in the '90s, that's what a video game was to me. Until I got the Super Nintendo, and like video games were just point and click. I played a lot of games like that actually. I'm trying to think of what the names would be though. There's one.
I know there were games like Secret of Monkey Island and stuff like that.
Yes, things like that, man.
Yeah.
Or like the early Lego games or something like that.
There were some really cool, like Grim Fandango for the PS1. That's always one that I've wanted to check out. I'm pretty sure that's like a point and click adventure with beautiful pre-rendered backgrounds and stuff.
They're fun. They're fun. But the Nancy Drew is peak that until the most recent one came out, and they use Unity engine, and they're trying to modernize, and they've kind of ruined their whole formula. That was a little sad. I mean, I was hoping my kids could, get into the newer ones, but we're just having to replay the old ones.
Yeah, it's one of those one of those genres that my wife is able to get into, because unlike maybe your wife, my wife is probably more something like, from what I've heard, Mike describe his relationship to video games and his wife. My wife. So
she doesn't play much.
No, not at all. She has definitely played some games with me, especially when we started dating. I think that was kind of her way of letting me know that she did have an interest in me. She was willing to sit down and play the first couple of hours of games like Kingdom Hearts and things like that. But no, she's not into it. She has sat down with me to watch some games that I know she has had a great interest in. For instance, Life is Strange. I guess you could kind of call that game a point-and-click adventure, but you can control the character, right? You're walking around, and basically the name of the game is Make Decisions. So when it's something like that, where my wife can participate by telling me what choices to choose, that is something that she is able to kind of get behind. So games like that is something that she's into.
Does she like mysteries and things like that? Yeah,
right now we're watching Dexter. I remember that show. Both of us never watched it back whenever it was on.
Yeah, but 15 years ago.
Yeah, now we're into season 5 right now, and she is huge on that. We will watch suspenseful, thrilling mystery TV shows and stuff like that. So if it's a game that is cinematic enough to hold her interest in that regard, I think she's into it. But handing her a controller and let's say like Final Fantasy VII, like she doesn't get the menu system. Like what are these options? Attack, magic, what is this?
Right. You should play Expedition 33 with her. She'd probably love that.
She has watched me play the the prologue of the game, and she's into it. I think she likes it. However,
that's a fascinating prologue right there.
Yeah, it is, and it's gut wrenching. I don't want to spoil the game for anyone who hasn't touched it yet. It's a brand new game. I talked very briefly about it whenever we were. I recorded a previous podcast kind of recently talking about Expedition 33, and I'm a huge fan of it. Right now, though, and this is kind of where I also wanted to talk to you about just like fatherhood and being a family man and running a channel like this. I personally, because this is not my full-time thing, I've got no time to play a game. This game came out a little while ago.
That's rough. And
probably since last week, whenever I recorded my video talking about the game, I have not touched the game at all. I really haven't played any video games at all. So does being able to start doing something like this in more of a full-time situation, I guess, does this kind of feel a little liberating to you to be able to actually sit down and play video games as long as you want, I guess?
I'll tell you what, though, I still feel guilty when I'm playing a game and the kids are crying and my wife's taking care of them, and I'm working, I promise. It's different, but I do like the fact that I am still able to play games, because you're right. I mean, for a while there, I wasn't able to do much either. This was a few years ago. I was not able to play games, and even when we did, part of the reason why that Xenogears podcast is 21 episodes long is because I could only play a couple hours a day, and this is like a 60-hour game.
Yes.
Or a couple hours a week. I mean, it's a couple hours a week, and this was a 60-hour game. Since I've been able to kind of free up more time to do this, and being able to do the job full time now, I can play a 40-hour game in basically just 1 week now. And that it's certainly liberating. I'm able to play games a lot more. But I don't know. At the same time, it's a job and it's still work. When I'm playing these games, I'm not, my kids aren't allowed around. I'm recording footage, I'm trying to make sure that I'm doing everything is still in a professional manner.
Right.
And so I can't exactly just invite my kids in and let them start screwing around, because it stops being work at that point, and I still need to treat it like work.
Yeah.
So there is still a separation there, but it's nice that I am able, for instance, to play Expedition 33, this brand new game that just came out, and we got it ahead of time from the publisher, but only like a week ahead of time. So I really had to, step on the gas to make that deadline for our first video that we did there.
Yeah, it's definitely I think it's a position that I think a lot of people are definitely, this is what they want to do, right? They're like, oh man, if I could just do that, if my job was to sit around and play video games, like obviously it's a lot more than that. But I think
as a teenager, it sounds pretty great, but it's work. It's a lot of work still. Well, when you turn something you love into work,
yes,
there's downsides to that as well.
Yeah. I used to always tell people to never work at like restaurants that you love to eat at, because then you'll never you'll never want to go eat at that restaurant. There's an ice cream place here in Austin called Amy's Ice Cream, and I worked there for 3 days, and I never want to walk into an Amy's Ice Cream ever again.
That's pretty
just
funny.
like stuff like that, you know. But also, that transition from, you didn't start off doing video game analysis as your full-time job and then became a father. It's that transit, like you said, I think a lot of people don't know the cost of something like that. And I kind of wanted to transition that into as well the fact that you are, what is it, a polyglot? Is a person
something
who,
like that.
Well, yes. Yeah, you know tons and tons of languages, and I know even even going through a process like that, where you in one of their recent podcasts, anyone who wants to listen to their how to learn a language like incredibly fast,
about 6 months ago.
Yeah, y'all talked about that, and you discussed how a situation like that, if the goal is to attain a lot of languages, like you can absolutely do it, but it might come at the cost of, in a lot of family photos, you're going to have headphones in, stuff like that.
It's embarrassing. Yeah, it's embarrassing for me to look at family photos from that time period.
Yeah.
My headphones are just always either in my ear, or I had those Bluetooth ones that are still tied together, like hanging around my neck kind of. And I just don't, I'm not going to do that again. But when you mentioned before that while you're, working in the shop or something, you'll put in a podcast. Yep. Well, I would put in audio from a movie or show that I watched or liked, or an audiobook in a foreign language, and I would just learn that language more or less passively. It's not totally passive, but like kind of passively, as I listened to Harry Potter in Spanish. And I was able to learn Spanish very quickly by doing that. And so that's what I chose to do when I had a job that allowed me to put in headphones. I would learn languages. And I still tend to do that, but I really stopped doing anything like that when it is time for me to be around my family, right?
Yeah.
I put the headphones away and I don't participate, which means I can't learn languages as fast anymore. But it's way more valuable for me to be there for my kids than to learn an 8th language,
Are you currently trying to learn anything new at the moment?
Svenska.
Okay. Is that Swedish? Or?
Jag talar svenska. I speak it now. I'm weighing whether I move from Swedish into Icelandic or into German.
Okay.
Because Swedish is kind of a decent jumping off point between either of those two. And a friend of mine is interested in Icelandic. And if I can get him to learn it with me, I'll go Icelandic. Otherwise, I'm probably going German. I have a collection of the Brothers Grimm stories in the original stories from 200 years ago in German.
Let's go.
So that's how I'm going to learn it, man. I'm going to listen and read those stories in German over and over. And I've got Lord of the Rings dubbed in German and all that stuff too.
Nice. How many languages do you know currently?
7. So French and Arabic I learned so long ago that I can understand them fairly-ish well when I hear them, but not speak them with any degree
maybe
of
at like a first grade
anymore.
level or something.
Yeah, kindergarten, preschool. Pretty low there. Whereas for Spanish and Korean and Japanese, I'm a little more proficient there. I've gotten pretty good at understanding Portuguese when I hear it now as well. Swedish, I've been doing for over a year. I'm pretty confident in Swedish. I'm reading The Lord of the Rings in Swedish right now, only have to look up a word every few pages at this point. So it's like I basically know the entire language now. I just am, twiddling my thumbs waiting for the next language that I should jump into. So yeah, that's where I'm at. But yeah, those are the languages. So some Eastern, which are hard. Korean and Japanese, freaking not easy, man. And then some of the other Western languages as well.
I think what I was also, just in regards to the way that you guys go about discussing these games, I am curious just to hear what inspired you. Obviously, I think it was a culmination of ideas between both you and your co-host, Mike.
Right.
What was it that made you guys think we need to look at a game like Final Fantasy VIII and let's just break this down like it's literary analysis. Let's do a book club for a game. What inspired you to actually start, I guess, just diving deep on the other philosophers and other authors that you guys are reading and incorporating that into the way that you are talking about video games of all things?
So this one's kind of funny, actually, because so Mike and I, this was during COVID that we decided to switch our podcast from gaming news and other topics that were just maybe more relevant and just deep diving into 30-year-old games. And we changed it. It was during 2020 that we had kind of left the channel alone for a little while. We weren't doing much. And it was Mike's idea. And he said, hey, man, what if we just really dive in deep to one game and talk about it only? And Mike is really good at just out-of-the-box thinking, coming up with stuff that isn't being done as much, right? Maybe the stuff that's on the edge there that we can try out that can help, maybe breathe some new life into an old medium or genre or something. And so the idea of doing a podcast, because I didn't even know what else we could do differently, turns out people would absolutely love a deep dive into at least some of the more popular games, like a deep dive. And we did that, especially for Xenogears. For Final Fantasy, I did bring up some stuff, but I went to film school, and I have been very interested in things like philosophy, psychology, religion, all of this kind of anthropology just in general, for a long time now. And I don't often find places to talk about it, right? So I just kind of had all this knowledge, but it's like, nah, these are video games where, it's not relevant, right? And then we start playing Xenogears, and I was like, wait, you mean all this like stuff that I've been reading about for years is like relevant now? Like this game references just the craziest stuff. In addition to like just the Bible and things like that, it also references like Karen Horney and of course Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell and Otto Rank and all of these old Sigmund Freud, all of these old philosophers. And for episode 1 of that game, I kind of pulled out the big guns and mentioned something about Sigmund Freud's idea of like phallic imagery or something, and I was like, look guys, this spaceship was designed this way on purpose, and a lot of people weren't happy about it, but other people were like, whoa, this is interesting, and it turned into something where we were allowed to pursue this like more philosophical tact that we hadn't really done before, but that both Mike and I are very interested in, and that I had gone to school. My degree in film isn't film production, it's in film critical analysis. I know it's not like the most useful thing in the world, but I did have to study a lot of Carl Jung and Jacques Lacan and Sigmund Freud during my film theory classes and whatnot. And even on top of that, I had studied psychology and whatnot before that, even in high school. So like,
I was going to ask if this was a field of study for you, like in college and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Nice.
But this gave me the excuse to just like dive head first. I started expanding my, my knowledge base. I started really looking into even more adjacent kind of works. I started reading more on Carl Jung than just Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious. I started reading, some of his other books, even some of his alchemy ones. He's got an introduction to like the psychology of alchemy, something like that. And it's the one that he wrote before Ion. Ion is the one where he just deep dives headfirst all the way into alchemy in the craziest way. Nobody understands that book until they've read a lot of Jung first. The Red Book is something else, man. The Red Book is also impossible to understand. That's more just his deep reflections on his own life and him just talking about all the different, like he was a traumatized fellow right there. And I would say that many of the people who've come up with deep insights the way that he has are also similar. Dostoevsky's the same way, that he had, I think he had epilepsy, and he was a writer before he had epilepsy, but once he had his first epileptic seizure, his writing leveled up after that, and he all of a sudden became a deep thinker, and he created insights, and he wrote what most people consider The Brothers Karamazov to be the best book ever written, and he wrote that basically at the end of his life, and that was something he was not capable of doing before he experienced this traumatic kind of situation that he couldn't escape. And all of a sudden his writing got really relevant and really good and really deep, and really, like, when I say relevant, I don't mean modern relevant, I mean forever relevant, right? That's why people are still reading his works. So anyways, I started just like going into all of that stuff, everything that I could get my hands on. Mike would say, oh, this next part that we're doing in Xenogears, it references this philosopher. And I'm like, all right, I'm down. So instead of learning languages that half year, I just was like audiobooks and reading books and just buying books and getting everything I could get my hands on, listening to lectures, just like really trying to broaden my abilities here. And that, once you do that, you don't just like go back. You don't go back to just like talking about video games as though they're children's toys. It kind of opened the gate to both him and I, for us both to just start really treating other games in that same way, with some deep respect and really trying to understand what the developers were trying to say, which is often informed by deeper philosophical works.
Are there some, I guess, hiccups or speed bumps along the way?
Yes.
Whenever I guess whenever you are studying people like Nietzsche, Carl Jung, things like that, especially as someone who, last time we talked, I don't know if it's still the same, but I've been fairly open about the fact that I am still a church-going person. I'm a Christian guy. So if this is something that you're studying on a regular basis, like, how hard is that to sort of juggle the ideas that you guys are reading about while also, I guess, holding the line? You know what I mean?
So I'm going to introduce you. This is someone I've been talking about more recently, but I've read him since very long ago, but his work hasn't seemed as relevant until now. Now, his work is always relevant if you know this man. His name is Marshall McLuhan. Very relevant all the time. But he was avowedly, he was a religious man. He some of his work was very good, extremely good and relevant, but I haven't found a good in for putting it into our video game discourse until this new game with Terranigma. And all of a sudden, so here's a difference between Marshall McLuhan and Hegel, who you mentioned before. Hegel came up with his dialectic, right? The thesis, antithesis, synthesis, right? The idea that when you come across two opposites, that there is a synthesis of the two that is often the right thing to go with, right? That these two ideas need to be reconciled. When you find a paradox, you need to find a way to reconcile them, which often involves going into the core of both of them and finding what unites them. Now, that's great. That's a good thing to do, generally speaking, but it is an argumentative dialectic. It is a dialectic meant to solve problems, right? And much of life and reality and philosophy and religion, and there are lots of things that aren't necessarily problems to be solved. There's a way that Heidegger talks about the way that humans think in two different ways. He talks about the more computational, technical way of thinking, and then he talks about a more meditative manner of thinking. And he fears that with the addition or with the advent of AI and all this stuff, that he feared that humans would lose that meditative way of thinking because it would feel or seem less valuable, right? For whatever reason, I still see the value in meditative thinking, even though it doesn't yield the same technical, like scientific results that you see around the world the way that computational thinking does, right? Okay. And that's good, that's fine, but there's a whole nother value to this that's harder to measure. That's called the meditative thinking. And this is where Marshall McLuhan comes in, because McLuhan was directly against Hegel's dialectic in the manner of needing to reconcile opposites. It's like, he felt that when you came across a paradox or when you found two opposites, what you should do is seek to understand them, right? The first thing you need to do is gain wisdom from seeking an understanding of the difference of these two things, right? Instead of trying to combine them somehow or feel like something's wrong. And so he would approach a situation and say, no, we are not going to like attain something. We're not trying to get power. We're not trying to have something. We're trying to exist and be in proper relationship with stuff. And we're trying to see it for what it is and understand it. The whole point is to understand, not to gain power. And sure. Hegel's dialectic is a way to kind of gain power and utility over things instead of really just seeking to understand why these opposites seem contradictory in the first place. So I am much more in line with Marshall McLuhan's view. When I see something that comes in direct opposition to what I think or feel, I am okay with letting things like rest like that. Some people just aren't capable of doing this, I think. Most people I want the answer, right? I want to know the thing. How can these two opposites be, right? I need to know which one's the right one or something like that. And I've never felt the desire or the need or the urge to have to do that. I am perfectly willing to, the correct mode, in my opinion, of understanding heaven or church or religion is that, first of all, it's a mode of being and not a solution to a problem, right? It's not utilitarian. It's meditative. And it is for your own benefit as well as the benefit of the entire world. But it isn't just a tool to be used, right? And, oh no, wrong tool. It's a Phillips, not a flathead. Okay, I got to get a different one now. Time to switch. It's like, no, you can have something and you can cherish it and treasure it, and especially something that means a lot to you, right? And you can also do other stuff, and there doesn't have to be a conflict there. Now, obviously, sometimes these things do come into conflict, and you're right that when I was reading Nietzsche, there were multiple times where I was like, "Whoa, man, that is that is scathing, right? That is scathing." But one thing you have to understand about Nietzsche is that his favorite writer, he felt that there was only one writer in the world who understood him, even though that they never met, and it was Dostoevsky. And when Nietzsche read Notes from the Underground, I believe, he thought, man, this guy gets it. This guy understands. Yeah. But Dostoevsky was a devout Christian. And I don't know what Nietzsche would have done were he to have ever encountered the book, The Brothers Karamazov. I don't think he would have become a Christian. I don't think that. But that book takes Nietzsche's philosophy without Dostoevsky even really having read Nietzsche or being familiar with him at all. That book takes Nietzsche and packages him up in a way that actually, as opposed to undercutting Christianity, it actually becomes something of a foundation for Christianity, right? Like the deep suffering of life is something that God himself entered into willingly. And that the anger that people have towards God is the anger that the people who crucified Christ showed him. Right, and we sometimes feel that same anger. I've even heard some of the famous atheists nowadays talking about, if I ever met God, I would say, "How dare you?" Yeah, the people who met him said that to him. Right. Yeah, that was the people who killed Christ. Yeah, and guess what? There's a way in which Christ, being surrounded by all of this scorn, somehow felt like. I have to be very careful how I word this. There's a way in which when Christ is surrounded by scorn, the scorn of those who are so mad at God and mad at the way that the world is, how could you have done it like this? If I ever meet God, I'll show him, right? Sure. Well, they did that. And what did he say? He said, forgive them. He entered into this willingly, right? He said that he didn't show his wrath against these people. In some ways, he actually deeply, deeply understood these people and thought, in some way, they have a right to be angry with me. But if they can just wait a little bit longer, I will show them why it was this way, right? And there's a manner in which, and this is how the Brothers Karamazov kind of comes to its culmination. Actually, this is more towards maybe the beginning-ish middle of the book, actually. But there's a chapter in which Alyosha and Ivan are having a fight. And basically, the older brother is telling the younger brother, he's being Nietzsche. He is being Nietzsche, and he's saying, "Look at how awful the world is. There's no way that you can worship a God who created this world." And all his younger brother does is stand up without saying a word, gives his brother a hug and a kiss, and his brother is just taken aback by it and is just like, "Well, I don't know what you're trying to say with this, but give me a dialectical Hegelian argument, please. Show me how this can be synthesized." And he said, "No, we're leaving things as they are, and we are going to move forward with a hope that there is something better." And that is like, "Well, where's your proof that there's something better?" And he goes, "Here. It's an embrace. It's a hug." And there's some way in which, like, these people who would be angry with God for how the world is, that were they to ever get in that situation, that they wouldn't get a rational answer. What they would get is an outpouring of love. And in some way, they would have to come to an understanding that, like, it's okay, right? And that this was worth it, and that everything, it's the idea of the atonement with the Father in Joseph Campbell's work, right? That there would be somehow in which these children are reconciled to the Father that they thought ill of until they finally understood, and then everything just kind of came into place, and it's an experience of love. And there is no proof that that's what's going to happen. You just, in order to live on the world and exist, you do have to have some belief or some hope that is what would happen. That just because I don't understand now doesn't mean I never will. And when I do, that doesn't mean that that won't be just like a beautiful experience when it happens. And I just have to hope. I just have to hope, as Dostoevsky did, that that's where things are going to go, because otherwise it's difficult to continue this whole experiment on Earth that we call life. It's difficult to justify continuing it unless we're going to say that there is a good, meaningful purpose for why everything is the way that it is. So there you go. That may have been more than you asked for, but when you talk about Nietzsche, it's a long road that I have to go on to really understand and to really explain how I can read Nietzsche and be like, just want to give him a hug, and to agree with everything he says, and then to also say that in suffering we actually approach divinity, which is a very Christian concept, but it's one that Nietzsche would probably just laugh at me if I ever told him that, but that there is something to it, and I can't deny that. It's an intuition I feel, and it's just how I feel, and I act in life according to that, right?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your perspective on this so much, man. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. Hey,
no problem.
In some ways, you kind of just preached the gospel to my audience, so thanks for that.
Oh, sorry. I mean, I don't know what your audience is, but if we're going to talk about how I can still be religious, there we go, man.
No,
there's deep
I appreciate
stuff
it. Yeah, no, and I think also just on that too, and I definitely don't want to
be preachy.
Well, I don't want to be preachy, but I don't want to just whenever I'm talking about what you do and what your channel is.
Yeah.
I don't,
because we don't do this on my channel.
No. And,
that's just me and you.
I don't want to also, I guess, make any sort of assumptions or talk about Mike's beliefs or anything without him being here. You know what I mean?
And I have learned that lesson, I think, the hard way. Mike and I have been friends for a very long time. He and I do not agree on this, but he is a very nuanced thinker. He's a very smart guy. He's very
I agree.
articulate.
I don't know him personally, but when I hear him talk, he's super nuanced.
Great.
I love that.
He is so good, and he has reasons just like I do. He has reasons for why he thinks the way that he does. And if you get to interview him, that would be the best, because anytime I ever try to speak for him, it doesn't go well. I end up getting things wrong.
I don't want you to. I definitely don't want you to.
That's good. And many people will agree with him, and that's fair.
Yes. And I guess also just from your perspective also on the dynamic that the two of you have, especially now that with the Patreon recordings, your conversations, your planning sessions, I'm sure you guys talk, outside of the podcast as well.
Maybe a little bit. Yeah.
So I guess I'm curious if there is any sense of maybe having to, in your discussions, whether it be the actual podcast recordings for, especially live streaming them to your Patreon members or doing the planning sessions, do you ever feel like you have moments where you just kind of have to not say the authentic thing that you are thinking because people are watching, and I don't want to necessarily start an argument with my co-host over this sort of stuff.
The answer is yes. It's just me being more tactful.
Sure.
Like, whenever we talk about these things, I'm giving my honest opinion, and often I will stray into this, right? And I'll say, hey, look, if you're going to ask me about how I reconcile Nietzsche with being a Christian, here you go, dude. Like, this is it. And it's going to result in maybe me stepping up on a little bit of a preachy soapbox.
Sure.
And I don't do that often on the channel. And it's true. And it is at least in part because, I don't want our channel to, if we start talking about religion a lot, like our religions a lot, or if we start talking about politics or things like that, things that we are aware of but that we choose not to talk about, if we start talking about it, it will just become that. These are things that have ways, with good reason, but they have ways of kind of consuming everything around them, right? And everything kind of becomes viewed through these lenses, right? And I view everything through the lens of my faith, of course, but and that just happens when I speak about it, of course. But I really don't want to get into maybe some of the more petty debates and some of the more, because a lot of people are going through these things, I heard somebody say it this way, like, he said, thank God that C.S. Lewis deconstructed his faith first instead of just blindly going along with it. Right?
Oh, man.
Because I don't know if you're aware, but he was an atheist until he was in his 30s. Because he was raised religious, but he was like, this is stupid. I don't believe it. And thank God that he did that in some ways. People are going through their own journeys, and eventually they can rediscover things in a much more meaningful way. Like, if we just tell people stuff, if I just tell people my opinions, it doesn't always have the effect that I want. It doesn't always work. It's not, but people go through their own journeys, and these video games are even part of them sometimes. These stories of these video games, they can be really deep. And as people are kind of figuring things out on their own, they can come to meaningful discoveries on their own. And it's more meaningful when you do it on your own. And I don't like spoon-feeding people stuff anymore. Like, this is something that I've changed a lot on, because I used to be a missionary, right? Long time ago. Decades ago. And I just don't have the same interest in, like, converting people anymore. Like, I just don't. I want to talk about things, and people will feel how they feel. And I don't even care about, it's all basically gone from my mind. Like, I'm not trying to push things onto Mike, or I'm not trying to, like, explain to him how he's wrong. There have been times where I have felt that going way back, but it's just not how it's not that I don't care at all, but I don't care to do that, at least not in that way anymore. And I would much rather just talk about good art, because in my mind, there is only the thinnest of separation between good art and religion. And if we're talking about good art, there is some ways in which art itself delivers a religious experience to people. And that message should come unhindered by my personal opinion about petty issues or politics or my specific denomination of faith, Sure.
Well, thanks for sharing that, man. No, that's really insightful, and it helps me too, just as I'm a personal listener of the show, and I join in on the Patreon on the streams. Maybe not as you are streaming them every single time, but I clean pools for a living, so I'm outside.
Oh, nice.
I've got my headphones in, so if y'all are ever recording during a time like that, it helps me get through that. But I've just thought about that sort of stuff, and whenever me and you briefly talked, and you even sent me a wonderful kind of debate, like a discussion on exactly what we were just talking about with Dostoevsky.
With Nietzsche and Dostoevsky.
Nietzsche. Yeah. Super insightful, just conversation there. And I was just curious to kind of see how that is continuously kind of present in your full-time job now. It's communicating these ideas with someone who might not believe in the same thing as you.
Just don't undercut the goal of what we're doing here, which is we're just discussing good art. I don't want to undercut
Absolutely.
that. And also don't, what's the other one? Don't say more than you have to say. Right?
Exactly.
Like, just be wise about it. And Mike and I have known each other for a long time. It's easy for us to do this. It may be harder if you're meeting new people, or maybe some people won't understand it. But for the most part, it's like, look, there are certain things that we know if we touch on it, we're going to talk about it for an hour, and we're not going to agree. So let's just talk about the game. Like, let's just keep it focused on the game and the story.
Well, and I think something that you, me, and Mike can all agree on is that even in pretty much all of the best art, specifically when it comes to things like film and video games and things like that, some of the best art has been bred from limitations. And I think even if you are able to limit even just your discussion and the ideas that you're trying to vomit out there, I think the more that you try to overload a discussion like that will start to undercut the beauty of the art and things like that.
True.
So I just appreciate, this perspective on all of this. If you don't mind, actually on my this is kind of a newer thing that I'm doing on my channel too, where I'm running this kind of as a podcast of my own. But I do have some listeners, whether it be on YouTube or Spotify or in my Discord, they do submit questions. I don't think anybody knows that I am interviewing you. But would you be down to answering some of these questions with me? Okay, cool.
Sure.
Cool. Well, so
just don't pull me into the petty political stuff, man.
No. In general, I would like to just talk about whatever. I'm not necessarily here to talk about politics. Well, maybe we might briefly discuss something like that with one of these questions.
They say religion is dollars, but politics is cents, right?
On YouTube, I have a question from Slop Lord.
Let's hear it.
Slop Lord asks me, Gavin, what do you think about Yakuza?
Yakuza, nice.
And I may actually just have a similar answer as you. But my thoughts on Yakuza sounds awesome. I would love to get into Yakuza. That is a long series. And I just haven't gotten into it. I mean, like, as much as I have tried, especially with Yakuza 0, that's like the one that a lot of people say, start here with Yakuza 0. I've not played any of them enough to necessarily have an opinion on the series as a whole. I know that the series has developed into now like a turn-based RPG with the Like a Dragon shifting of the branding. I think it's really cool. And I would really like to play the games one day. I don't know, Casen, do you have any experience with the Yakuza games?
I do, but like you're right. I have never actually beaten any of them. And Kiwami was, I think, my first one.
The first game.
Yeah, but it was like a remake or something like that, right?
Yes.
I do not have a ton of experience with them. Any game where you're running around Japan, though, as someone who's been to Japan, that's just a magical part of the world. I am all for that. The Persona games do a similar thing. If you can run around in Japan, that's just awesome. And I have a theory, though. I have this like subtle guess that the reason why these games are called Yakuza. I did a video about the video game industry's connection to the Yakuza, and I was trying to find information about Sega and Sammy's. Sammy's kind of is partnered with Sega, or I think they might even own them. And all I could get when I would type Yakuza and Sega was the game. And I almost wonder if they did that on purpose to kind of like
hide
cover the
something?
trail a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not accusing them of anything. It's just a little funny. I couldn't really find what I was looking for because
it's funny because you would think like if they are actually trying to hide something, it's almost like hiding in plain sight. Literally, you have a game called Yakuza. What are you doing?
But in a search engine keyword based world, that's brilliant. If that's what
it is brilliant.
That's brilliant.
That is brilliant.
Smart people.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into the series. So that's my answer for you, Slop Lord. Mushroom Man, and this is actually a good buddy of mine. I'm going to have him on the podcast eventually too, because he's gained about 10,000 subscribers recently covering anime content. So we're just going to have a conversation about anime and manga and stuff like that. Nice. But Mushroom Man, he asks, he leaves a comment. He just says, I knew that Clair Obscure was going to be fun, but holy moly, the game looks awesome, and it's only $50. Frick yeah. And then he says, I love the logo for the podcast. Thank you very much. And then he asks, my question for your next video is, how do you feel about the whole Nintendo and the Switch 2 pricing situation? And this is definitely something that I know you guys have talked at length about. And I guess just to kind of quickly talk about this, it's funny. I tried recording an entire separate video just talking about this because I was kind of fuming for a little while. You would have, if I had made this video, it's almost like there are forces out there that really tried to make sure that I did not make this video because I recorded the video 3 times and every single time there was something so unbelievably wrong with the recording that it was like, no, we can't I'm not posting this. But thanks for asking me this. Now this is my opportunity to give my thoughts on this. And ultimately, I'm not trying to rage bait or anything like this, but I think that, I think it's ridiculous. And I am really, really happy. I don't know even if you saw this yesterday, Casen.
Yeah.
But they announced they showed off gameplay for the new Mafia game. I don't know if you're familiar with the Mafia series.
I am.
Yeah, it's like GTA, right? But it's more story driven and like this sort of Mafia setting. This next Mafia game, I think it's called The Old Country. It is not like a side game. This is the next full entry, the next evolution of the Mafia series. And they just announced that they are making it a $50 game.
Oh,
and
wow.
I think that we
cheaper.
are... Dude, I think we are now, since Nintendo has started all of this discussion on pricing, $80 games, especially with things like tariffs being involved and things like that. There's just so much that people are saying about this. I think that we have entered the $80 war. I think we are going to war with $80 games. And I know, Casen, I'm 25 years old. And you probably remember pricing of video games shifting around a lot more than I do, because for me personally, the average cost of a brand new video game was $60, right?
Oh, really? Okay. Well,
I am totally fine with now seeing a resurgence of brand new games going down to $50, $10 cheaper than the most expensive games that I remember at the time. I think that would be so interesting. But
it's a bold move.
It is. But, we have games like Clair Obscur and even EA games of all people. I think a lot of people are kind of memeing on them right now because it's EA games. But they had an announcement saying that they've got no plans on releasing games for $80. And a lot of people are saying it's like, oh, yeah, because they're going to release them for $90 instead. Or they're going to, make up for that in microtransactions or something like that. Right. But I think it's very interesting. We are now seeing that we have had Nintendo announce, yes, we got $80 games coming. We've got Microsoft also saying, yes, we have $80 games coming. But I think that people are going to, in the same way that they did with Clair Obscur Expedition 33, I think they're going to look at games like the upcoming Mafia game and just on maybe just protest alone, they're going to pull the trigger on that game, even though they don't know anything about the Mafia series. That's just for the fact that it's a $50 game. I don't know. How do you feel about, these upcoming $80 games and Nintendo having basically a Switch Pro released as what they are calling the Switch 2, but it's, $500.
Right. So that's a good question. So I have just gotten used to everything going up a lot lately. Yeah. And the fact that games went up, I didn't really blink or bat an eye even. I was like 80, well, so is everything else I know of.
Bound
has
to
gone
happen.
Up 30% in the last 4 years. So games went up as well. Sounds about right. Just kind of accepting it as a reality of the world. And in many ways it is. However, doesn't have to be. And it's not always just how the world works. Sometimes companies can be pushing it a little bit for their own reasons. 50. I never expected the price would go down though. That's wild. Yeah. Just to maintain it at the same level would be fine. To go down $10, that's just wild. I can't believe consumers got a win like this. That's just insane. I doubt Mafia was going to do 50 before Nintendo announced 80. Right. Yeah. The thing is, this is Keynesian monetary policy. Games will. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Games will cost $80 one day. It's going to games will cost $1,000 one day, because that's just how inflation works. And so I feel like maybe if you're fighting against it, you're fighting a losing battle. But to see a win like this, it's just holy crap.
It's incredible.
I can't believe it. And from all industries, video games, and Japan and all this stuff, the stuff that's involved, it just kind of blows my mind. So, hey, if games come down in price, I think that's great, so long as the employees are still treated well. If it comes with pay reductions on the staff, that's a problem for the whole industry. But if that doesn't happen, if somehow they're able to lower the price and everything operates as usual, I've got some questions on why the price was so inflated in the first place.
Right.
But yeah, it's great. I think it's awesome.
Nice. I think just in general, I'm kind of in the position right now where I am not going to buy the Nintendo Switch 2. At least I'm not pre-ordering it. Yeah. I'm probably not going to buy it whenever it's brand new either. I might wait for a sale or a discount or something like that. But I personally believe in the idea of voting with your wallet. And from my perspective, I think by me sending Nintendo $500 for their upgraded Nintendo Switch as well as the next Mario Kart game, that's me telling them I'm okay with what you're doing here, and I'm just not. So I might not be necessarily telling you guys what to do. I don't know how many people are going to watch this, but I personally would suggest maybe holding the line, because whenever we have other companies out here who are fighting the battle as well with $50 games and things like that, I think that there is a reality out there where we could potentially be sending the message to Nintendo, hey, I don't like that you're doing this. And the only way that they will continue to do it is if we monetarily support them. That's the only thing that a corporation like Nintendo is going to care about. So that's kind of my position on it right now. I don't know if you're of the same mindset.
Well, I was initially, I suppose, but my Switch is in such bad condition.
You need an upgrade.
That I kind of need a new one anyways. Yeah. And the choice is between, either get the new one, or when the new one comes out, get an old one, because people are going to be trading it in, and I can get an old one, a used one, or something like that. But honestly, like I mentioned before, sometimes these publishers will give us games ahead of time.
Yes.
And I need a system to play them on. I'm in a position where the closer it gets, the more I'm thinking, I'm gonna end up buying the Switch 2. I'm going to end up buying it. And the games are gonna be great. I just am not stoked about that.
I think my thing with the games too, and it kind of coincides too with this idea that I am not necessarily playing video games all day every day because I'm able to. I'm not doing that. I run my own company here in Austin. I edit videos for another YouTuber, and I more importantly, above all things, I am a father and a husband. So when it comes to Metroid Prime 4, right, the next Mario Kart game, I'm pumped about that. But I can hold off. Yeah. I have this. I'm not necessarily missing anything by not playing those games right now, because I will play them eventually, and especially having kids has made me a more patient person as a whole.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm definitely tested my patience like plenty of times, and I think that with the whole Nintendo Switch 2 situation, I'm okay with holding off, especially whenever they're making a lot of those games playable on Nintendo Switch, even if they're not necessarily the best graphical fidelity. Like if I really want to, I can probably still play them on my Switch. And I don't know. I'm personally not super stoked about the Nintendo Switch 2.
All right.
Yeah, that's it. That's really all I have to say about that, guys. Thank you. Thank you for asking me those questions, guys. Slop Lord and Mushroom Man, thank you for those questions. Casen, I don't know if there was anything that, I guess based off of anything else that we talked about, if there's anything about your channel or anything upcoming that you guys are about to start doing on the channel, if there's any sort of self-promotion that you would like to do right now, I guess the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, we're doing Final Fantasy 9 soon, so that's just fun. Come check us out for watching philosophical and story-oriented, just meaningful content centered around video games, often old games, because we're old.
Yeah. Well, and like you mentioned too, Suikoden.
We're not that old, come on. Suikoden's coming up. We're doing that. We're playing Expedition 33, which is wonderful. Just exciting stuff. And, if you like to talk about that stuff, we're talking about it.
Yeah, and for the love of all that is good, go watch their Terranigma podcast series that they have put so much effort into. It's so good, and it's inspired me to pick up books like this, the philosophy of history and stuff like that. So, like I said in the beginning of this episode before I let you go, this really has been something that I've been looking forward to, because the show that y'all have done up to this point, the format, all of the different switch ups of the format, everything that you guys have put out, whether it just be videos on YouTube or they be podcast series, all of which has enriched my gaming life tremendously, and not even just with gaming, but also with watching movies, right? Watching TV shows with my family.
Right.
I literally start to tear up whenever I watch movies like the freaking Lego movie because of just how much it follows like the hero's journey. Like, I don't know. I just see that sort of stuff and I hear the language that they're using. And I don't know. It opens up my eyes to a lot of that stuff. And I think I really do thank you guys a lot for the work that you guys have done in putting a lot of these more, philosophical ideas into the minds of just your average gamer. And I think it turns regular old gamers like me into more deep thinkers. And I don't even necessarily mean to say that as a, now I'm big brain,
like pejorative.
Yeah. But I think, like I said, just in other facets of my life, I literally look at things differently because I'm able to think more about the things that you guys have brought up, and they've encouraged me to broaden my horizons in regards to what I'm studying and things like that. Even if it's not a necessarily theological, it's not something that I'm necessarily agreeing with on a theological level or something like that. I'm still able to find a lot of beauty in the art of these ideas. And like you had mentioned earlier with, just the pursuit of understanding. I think a lot of that is what these philosophers are doing. And we kind of come many philosophers ourselves whenever we are pursuing that understanding of things like that. So thanks, man, for just bringing a lot of that to my attention.
The Lego movie, the atonement with the son and father is just...
Oh, dude.
It's a fascinating thing in that movie.
Yeah.
And these
he
are
forgives
stories.
His son for ruining the Legos.
Yeah. That one was more of the father atoning with the son. They kind of invert things a little bit, but it's always a meeting between people who didn't understand each other before, and then they do. And hey, man, that's what it's all about.
I love it, man. All right, dude. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. I look forward to having more conversations like this within the future. I think that it would be really fun. So thanks again for coming on, man.
Great. Of course.